at all.
Okay, you're not satisfied. Now, I agree it's a problem. 80% of whites kill whites, correct?
I won't dispute that figure.
Okay, actually, it's 83%. Now, is white-on-white violence a problem in America that we should also have a robust discussion about?
Violence in America, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Congressman, violence in America in general is problematic. But if you look at the rates, that's where it starts coming a little more into balance in terms of...
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So, I was going through some classic congressional hearing clips, and I stumbled on this exchange between Representative Hakeem Jeffries and former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. Look, whether you follow Capitol Hill closely or you're just tired of politician grandstanding, this clip is a complete masterclass in what happens when a seasoned law enforcement officer confronts political soundbite traps with hard real-world reality. Hakeem Jeffries thought he was going to set a clever statistical trap about crime rates and police procedures. But Sheriff Clarke doesn't play those games. He immediately redirects the focus back to the fundamental principle that keeps society together, the rule of law and personal accountability. When politicians treat police commands like optional suggestions, the system breaks down. We're going to roll the full, uninterrupted clip right now, so you can see every second of how this exchange unfolded. Before we jump in, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment below letting me know your thoughts on how congressional hearings handle law enforcement topics. Let's roll the footage.
Not at all.
Okay, you're not satisfied. Now, I agree it's a problem. 80% of whites kill whites, correct?
I won't dispute that figure.
Okay, actually, it's 83%. Now, is white-on-white violence a problem in America that we should also have a robust discussion about?
Violence in America, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Congressman, violence in America in general is problematic. But if you look at the rates, that's where it starts coming a little more into balance in terms of the data I've seen, and I've looked at a lot of it. The white-on-white crime does happen, 80% figure you put out there. But when you look at the rates of it, these two are not even close.
Right, the rates are roughly equivalent in terms of the context of people who live next to each other, and because of housing segregation patterns or just where people tend to live in America, ethnic violence tends to occur, racial violence within the same group. And so elevating it beyond that fact, I think, is irresponsible. We all want to deal with the black-on-black violence problem. Now, it was mentioned that there's a cooperation issue in the black-on-black violence context. I don't think I've heard the phrase mentioned, blue wall of silence, here. So if we're going to have a conversation about cooperation when someone crosses the line, seems to me to make sense that we also have to deal with what may be another elephant in the room, to use your term, Sheriff Clarke, the blue wall of silence, that the overwhelming majority of officers are good officers. But what often occurs is that when an officer crosses the line, the ethic is not to cooperate or participate or speak on what a bad apple officer has done. Professor Ramirez, would you agree that that's perhaps something that we should also be focused on?
I think it's a serious problem both at the federal and state level. And as I said earlier, in my own experience in trying to prosecute police officers, I had problems. Here's just one problem. The FBI and DEA said we won't even serve subpoenas on a case in which there's a police officer as a defendant. Here's a second problem. They tried to testify in the case in favor of the police officer, saying that they had made their own independent evaluation of the case. This is a case, by the way, that was adjudicated guilty against all officers, and they were incarcerated for between 10 and 20 years after the trial. And as you know, in Boston, we had a problem with the FBI, that there were FBI agents who were engaged in a series of misconduct with Whitey Bulger, and that went on for many years and was not prosecuted.
Well, thank you, Professor Ramirez. My time is getting ready to expire, but Sheriff Clarke, you also mentioned that, the use of force should be examined in terms of factual data and not an emotional foundation of false narratives. Is that correct? Did I get your testimony correct in that regard?
Mr. Chair and Congressman, yes.
Okay. Now, what was the reaction to the Eric Garner case, who was choked to death using a procedure that had been banned by the NYPD for more than 20 years, wasn't resisting arrest, said, "I can't breathe" 11 times on 11 different occasions. There was no response by all of the police officers who were there. Was that a false narrative that people in the city of New York and the country are reacting to, sir?
Mr. Chair, Congressman, first of all, he wasn't choked to death, not from the report that I had seen out of the grand jury testimony, and even from the medical examiner's report. He wasn't choked to death.
The medical examiner ruled the death a homicide by asphyxiation. In the ghetto, that's called being choked to death, sir.
Well, then we could have this discussion later on then about the facts, because we could be here for a while. My understanding is he died of a heart attack, okay? So, but anyway, you said that he wasn't resisting arrest. He was resisting arrest. He was told that he was under arrest and put his hands behind his back, and he wouldn't do so. And that's why I put in my remarks here the reference from Thomas Sowell about when law enforcement officers tell someone they're under arrest and they can't use force to execute that arrest. We don't have the rule of law when it's merely a suggestion for them that they're going to jail or to put their hands behind their back. Those are behaviors, like in the instance of Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, where some different choices by the individual could have helped the situation. In other words, Mike Brown was just simply told to get out of the street.
Sir, my time has expired, but, you know, for you to come here and testify essentially that Eric Garner is responsible for his own death when he was targeted by police officers for allegedly selling loose cigarettes, which is an administrative violation for which he got the death penalty for, is outrageous. And if we are going to have a responsible conversation, we've got to be able to at least agree on a common set of reasonable facts that all Americans can interpret, particularly in this instance because they caught the whole thing on videotape.
Man, where do you even start with an exchange like that? What stands out immediately is the massive disconnect between a politician sitting on a committee dais in Washington and a guy who actually spent his career walking the beat in local communities. Notice how Jeffries opens the questioning. He starts by throwing out a statistic about interracial crime rates, bringing up white-on-white crime, to build a specific narrative. But look at how Sheriff Clarke handles it. He doesn't take the bait, and he doesn't get rattled. He acknowledges the baseline numbers, but immediately grounds a conversation in actual criminological context, talking about geographic population density and per capita rates. He refuses to let a complex societal issue get boiled down into a quick political talking point. Then Jeffries tries to shift gears toward high-profile police incidents like the Eric Garner case. And this is really the crux of the whole debate. Jeffries relies heavily on emotional framing and media headlines. But Sheriff Clarke immediately brings the conversation back to the legal and physical realities on the ground. Grand jury findings, medical examiner reports, and standard law enforcement protocol. The most vital point Sheriff Clarke makes in that room, and he actually cites economist Thomas Sowell to drive it home, is about the baseline authority of law enforcement. In a free, constitutional republic, being placed under arrest is not a negotiation. It's not a debate where you get to say, "No thanks, not today," and walk away. If an officer tells you that you are under arrest, you comply. If you believe the arrest is wrongful or unfair, you fight it in the courtroom with a lawyer, not in the street with an officer. That distinction is everything. Once politicians preach the idea that resisting arrest is understandable or justified, they strip law enforcement of the ability to maintain public order safely for everyone involved. You could see Jeffries' frustration toward the end when his allotted time expired. He tried to quickly jump to a moral outrage closing statement because he realized Sheriff Clarke wasn't letting him dictate the terms of the argument. Clarke stood firm, backed up his positions with practical legal logic, and refused to apologize for defending law enforcement. That is the difference between political grandstanding and practical authority. When you bring actual experience and constitutional principles to a congressional hearing, the political sound bites just fall completely flat.